Next, I've got the laser set up over there, and we're going to walk around and make sure we've established that the form boards are all level and are at least on the same level as each other. And then we're going to make sure that we've got a minimum amount of depth below the level surface of the concrete. I know I don't have a perfectly smooth surface here. There's some undulations here and there, but we're going to at least make sure that it's not going to dip up too much. Now I'm going to start laying out the plastic underlayment for underneath the concrete slab. So this will help to at least mitigate, if not prevent, any moisture from wicking up into the concrete. Concrete's like a big sponge, so it can wick up moisture from below the pad, and we want to keep that from coming into the pad. So this is pretty self-explanatory. We're just using just the normal box store stuff. I was wanting to use the Stego wrap, which is either 10 mil or 15 mil, that yellow stuff. And they also have a pretty good tape that goes along with it so that you can tape up the seams. But I ended up using this with time and schedules and everything. I just ended up doing this. Plus, since I am putting insulation down too, we're kind of double dipping on the underlayment here. So I feel pretty comfortable with this. So, you know, it kind of helps having a little human ballast there. Otherwise, you've got to use weights. I did put rebar in the trenches there to help keep the corners where they should be. A lot of people will say that, or the recommendation is that you can just overlap each piece of plastic by 6 inches or more, and not necessarily have to use tape. I overlapped it by 6 inches or more and still used the tape. However, I used, I guess, a different type of tape than you should use for this. Even though this is what they recommended, leaving it out over several days, me doing this and going to work and coming home and whatnot, the tape will, in the sun, the tape will shrink and stretch at a different rate that the plastic will. So that became a little bit of a problem. So I ended up having to redo things a few times. But like I said, this is fairly self-explanatory here. We're just laying it out, taping the seams. When you come to a pipe, just put pull it up top next to the pipe and cut it with a razor blade, and then just tape up around the pipe too. So that way nothing will seep up from the ground around the pipe and into your concrete floor. Now that the underlayment is all down and taped, I am beginning to insulate on top of that. So I chose to use a 1.5-inch polystyrene insulation. And this particular insulation also has the radiant barrier foil on one side. So I'm going to use that to where the foil is face up, so that since we're using a heated floor, the radiant floor, all that heat theoretically will come down and basically bounce against that radiant barrier and come back on into the house instead of being absorbed into the ground, which is the main reason that I am insulating the pad. Most people do not do this with slab on grade, at least in Texas. Up north they do, but in Texas you don't see this all that much. One, I like the fact that there's an extra barrier against water intrusion or moisture or anything like that. But being able to insulate against losing that heat, I think is very important. So I did the same thing with this. I put it down and I taped all the seams. I used a 2-inch tape on all of the seams, and this stuff goes down fairly easily. It's kind of like sheetrock. You can just score one side with a razor blade, break it, and then cut the vinyl on the back side of it and put it down. So it pretty much goes down like sheetrock. And again, once you come up to a pipe, you just measure it, cut a hole, and then fill that hole wherever you need to fill the gaps, and then tape back on up the pipe. So not only do we have the underlayment that's being taped around the pipe, now we're putting the insulation down, which is being taped around the pipe, so that hopefully we don't get a lot of anything coming up from the ground into the house. Because around those pipes, once the concrete cures, it can have a tiny little crack there and allow radon and moisture, bugs, things like that to come up through that crack. We're also going to be using a product called Termi-Mesh that will hopefully prevent termites and ants and things like that, roaches in Texas, from coming up through the gap around the pipe there and on into your house. We'll do a whole video on the Termi-Mesh. But this is the insulation going down. We're almost done here. It was pretty sunny, so you got the sun coming down from one side and then reflected again from up underneath. But we got it down, and we'll be ready for rebar here pretty soon. One thing I chose not to do, only because it was an incredible pain in the neck, was put insulation on the vertical portions of these trenches. So I ended up just doing another layer of plastic around it. I did do the vertical portions of the perimeter, just not on the inside of the perimeter, and then the two trenches going in the middle of the slab there.